What's up, guys? It is Dave, it's Duncan, back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. And for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from New York progressive sludge band Netherlands.
New York!
Ooh,
Out of nowhere.
breaking some Alicia Keys out already.
I mean,
Early.
Keys is in the name. And
That is
I
true, Duncan,
play
that is true.
keyboard. And I have a
I love how you're linking all this back.
keyboard. It's all coming together. The name of the album is called Severance, which is the P I'm getting when Dave fires me after this review. There we are. That's how you
Severance.
link, Dave. That's
Yeah.
it. You thought I'd lost it, didn't you? You thought
Yeah.
he's off in the weeds.
Yeah, you brought it back. You brought it
Brought
back.
it back. Just when they thought I was out, Dave.
Nicely done.
They pulled me back.
The new album, Severance, will be released on March 31st via Svart Records.
The question is though, who are the band?
Who are the band, Duncan? And
Who are
why,
they?
why are they on album number 9? That's what I want to know.
New York.
What is going on?
I'm just assuming like we were in a coma for a decade.
Yeah, I have never heard of this band before, but it seems to be kind of centered around one guy, a multi-instrumentalist, the creator and the unrepentant volume addict. Timo Ellis goes under the Netherlands moniker. While Ellis is perpetually working, he's not one to work without a grander purpose than loud music for the sake of loud music. In the man's own words, Severance suggests a catastrophic separation explosively brought about in the last 250 years by techno-industrial civilization and the human supremacist worldview, which separates us from the earth, from each other, and from ourselves. This album was about the urgent need to return to values, traditions, and rituals that restore our connection with the earth, all of its creatures, and ourselves. It is about abolishing corporate capitalism, unchecked technological expansion, and halting the unnecessary pillaging of this planet's creatures and resources. About a path forward that integrates modern foundations of fairness, community, compassion, love, and sovereignty for all people, animals, and earth systems. An album exploring topics as heavy as the ones Severance tackles requires sonics to match. For Ellis, a prolific producer and engineer himself, the skills and peerless engineering sensibilities of taste-making heavy music producer Kurt Ballou and the
Spray my drink everywhere. Who?
and the hallowed walls of Ballou's God City studio in Salem proved the ideal space to capture the record's massive sounds. For Ellis, Ballou's unmatched attention to detail and comprehensive tuning of the drum and organic guitar sounds on Severance proved to be an X-factor in capturing the most monstrous and fully refined Netherlands release to date. The experience of tracking Severance with Ballou surpassed all of Ellis's expectations and reinforced the Neth mastermind's belief that Ballou is one of the best and most artfully minded heavy music producers of his generation.
I think we will all agree with that.
Amen.
Yeah, we'll literally hear something this guy has been associated with that we don't think sounds fucking amazing.
I know. Everything he touches,
Yeah.
gold.
Yeah.
Gold.
Oh.
So somehow I'd missed the past 8 releases, okay, but I'd also totally missed the singles from this new album as well. And then
We caught one, and then you sent me Omisha, did you not?
did I?
Yeah, ages ago. See, this
I had
is
no
what happens when you
recollection of it.
exist in a bubble of I just don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I
Like,
don't.
you listen to so much music, you've forgotten about this. Omisha came out maybe a month and a half ago, and you sent me it, and you said, this is coming out on Svart Records. It's a 2-piece. And I listened to it, and I was like, I fucking love this. Well, I will send the chat threads later on. You put them on my radar.
Right, okay. I
So-
completely forgot.
Yeah,
we
so
listened
from
to
that,
this.
I heard at least one other single, and I was like, I'm not listening to any more until the album comes in. But
Right.
then, out of nowhere, you're like, I've got the album. I was like,
Yeah.
this is why, one, I love Svart Records, because they give us things early. And two, this is why I love doing this review stuff, because I get to listen to the music before it comes out.
Yeah. Yeah, here I thought you were ahead of the curve there, Duncan, but it turns out...
No, you were ahead of the curve. You literally, you were so ahead of the curve that you forgot you gave me a single months ago.
Yep, completely forgot. Yeah, so yeah, I'd obviously went and listened to that single again. Or maybe it was the other one I listened to. No, maybe it was the title. Was it the title track? Was it the title track? I can't remember. Who knows?
Omniscience the one that you sent to me.
Right. Okay. I listened to another single a few days ago, and that's what I was like. Whoa! Wait a minute. Hold on a second.
Hold the phone.
We need to get in about this. And I suppose from that track that I listened to, I thought I had an idea of what to expect. But after listening to the album, turns out I knew fuck all really, Duncan, from that track. Absolutely nothing. When that first track kicks in, I was like, what's going on here? I was like, this has got like hints of like Author and Punisher or like The Body about it. Like I'm like, what's actually happening here? And it sounded, that first track sounds a little different to the rest of the album in kind of tone and in style. But I later found out that track 1 was actually recorded, mixed and mastered separately from the rest of the album by someone else. And then tracks 2 to 10 were done at God City with Kurt Ballou. That being said, a really interesting opener. It's kind of slow and noisy and kind of drone filled, and more almost industrial, more industrial than anything else on the album. But I also kind of liked that it left you wondering what the fuck was going to come next.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really have a clue. I don't know if you had that same kind of feeling, but I was unsure after the first track.
So the two tracks I had heard were in a different sphere to the opening track, but it wasn't as much. So I like on Omniscia, which was the first track I'd heard, because it had that really, it was grounded in that kind of really dank sludge kind of undertone thing that they've got going there. However you pronounce that one. The name of the first track. Track 1. Wasn't so much a jump for me. The only thing that kind of shocked me was the kind of use of the kind of synths, which weren't on any of the other tracks I heard, but are dotted throughout the rest of the album. So it wasn't as if they only did it on that and then nothing else.
Right. Okay. Yeah, so after I got past that first track, it turns out the rest of the album is kind of just as mind-bending, but in an enjoyable way. I'm going to say, I can hand on heart say I haven't heard anything quite like this. When people talk about like unique sounding albums, I feel like this is one of those albums that you go, yeah, here you go, have a listen to this. This is quite a unique album. And you can pick out small elements that like maybe remind you of other bands, like a riff or a vocal idea, but at the same time, this doesn't really sound like any of them. I felt like this is an album that each track kind of screams personality. They all have something that kind of sets them apart from each other, sounding totally unique, but they also have a kind of characteristic that kind of shackles them all together, and ultimately makes this sound like an album rather than like 10 detached songs. Before I get into songs, there's one thing I want to start with, which is the guitar tone. I need to start here. This is where I need to start with this, because
this is where you're starting.
Yes, this is something that caught my ear instantly after obviously the first track, which is more of a kind of intro. I was just blown away by this guitar tone, and again, Kurt Ballou, the master of making a band sound like the tones and sounds they've recorded were absolutely tailored for them. And this guitar tone feels like it is just made for Netherlands. It's got the weight of like a sludgy kind of noise rock tone, but it's got this like thick bellow to it that's like almost in a kind of like stoner doom kind of territory as well. But it feels more than just a tone. Like you can actually you can feel the heaviness from this. Kind of like, see, when I heard Oblation, but the band called Floor, who released an album called Oblation. That was one of those albums that when I heard it, you could almost hear or feel the guitar cabinet like almost caving in on itself, because it was so heavy. Such a cool sound, and this kind of gives me that same feeling. I adore the guitars on this. But I also love that they don't stick with the same tone the whole way through either. The guitar tone will often change ever so slightly, or they'll use different tones on the same track, but it totally works. Like, it never sounds out of place. And I think it really becomes apparent when they lock into some kind of groove on the album, and that tone just comes into itself. It is just like a nuclear bomb going off. And those moments are kind of scattered throughout this album, right from Swimming Dog, which is track 2. And some of the riffs are just utterly pummeling. Like when the riff kicks in on Animal Insults, my face was just like melting. My face was just literally melting. It sounds like the strings are almost hanging off the fretboard. It's so disgusting. But what I loved about this is that it's not a predictable album at all. Like obviously they're classed as a kind of progressive sludge, but this doesn't follow a typical sludge blueprint.
No.
This can be quite contorted, quite jerky sounding as well, which it makes it a really interesting release to listen to from a rhythmical point of view, because it doesn't always follow that like 4/4 straight down the line kind of sludge formula. It is very progressive at times, quite mathy as well, and its kind of patterns. They love to throw in a curveball with something quite offbeat. Still hook laden. Omisha is a great example of that, where they slip into that groove for a bit, but then they go down a far more almost kind of quirky path rhythmically for a few bars, just to kind of keep you on your toes as well. And I think that's quite kind of indicative of this album as a whole. It doesn't go in an obvious direction. I felt like the first part of the album gives you a lot of the heavy stuff up front, the almost kind of the riffs of the album. And then I think it was around track 5, the title track, where it starts to kind of evolve a bit more. Still has the riffs, but also starts to focus more on the vocals and the melody, which I really liked. And there is melody obviously before that track, but I felt like there was more attention to it from about track 5 on. And then Blue Whale, they start to give you a little bit more of that kind of quirk. It's still got the sludge undertones, but there's more of the noise rock kind of trait starting to come through, some more proggy elements. And then from Goons, it goes kind of all in on that experimental kind of noise rock side. And it's kind of, it's memorable for a different reason. Those tracks, it doesn't have the big vocal melody or like a huge standout chorus, but it's got a bit of an eccentric kind of streak to it.
There's a little bit kind of Faith No More about it, and less in the kind of the melody, but more in the percussion. Yeah, it's very tribal with the rhythms they use. Lots of kind of odd noises and strange kind of vocal lines, weird fucking synth bass coming in as well. It's very that track is a total oddball of a track, which I thought that's maybe going to be a one-off in the album, where they go all out, weird. That's not the case. Then they follow up with Glow Stick, which is just as fucked up. If you thought they were going to pull it back, then you were completely wrong. And those kind of like weird, glitchy electronics were even more kind of prevalent. The drums are erratic. The guitars there's lots of kind of wailing noises and odd chords. But then about halfway through it kind of starts to recenter, and the guitars then start to form into something that you could call a riff, I suppose, before the vocals then start to add some cool melody, and they bring the electronics back in to kind of tie up the end of the track. Then the last 2 tracks of the album go on a different journey again. You've got Silencio, which is kind of trippy, retro, indie, psych rock or something around that kind of area. Far more restrained than anything else you've heard on the album so far. It feels slightly more conventional arrangement-wise, with like kind of verses and choruses. It's got some really cool strings as well in it as well. A bit of a almost kind of funky bass line that kind of keeps it kind of grooving along.
And I think that track, it was definitely needed after the previous two tracks, which are quite kind of off the wall. And then Celia's Mansion, the closing track, I thought it was fucking awesome. I loved the last track on the album. It still has some of that kind of laid back tempo and kind of melody in the guitars. It's quite soulful in style, but then it's like spliced with these moments of real heaviness where the sludge guitars come in and give you this kind of huge, almost kind of doomy groove. That last track vocally did remind me a little bit of kind of like Zealand Ardor.
Yep.
How it kind of goes more soulful in the vocals. But it wasn't till the end of the album that actually I realised like how many vocal styles and tones we get on this album.
He does quite a few.
Yes, it's so varied. Like there's everything from the kind of dirty, heavy tones. There's a clean tone. There's a falsetto voice. There's like a Zach De La Rocha.
On Misha. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I was like, what's going on here? And then there's like the straight up like batshit crazy. And then there's that kind of real soulful side, kind of very authentic vocal delivery on the closing track and on the title track as well. A real kind of like smorgasbord of styles, like, and it's quite impressive how he manages to implement them all throughout the album. I found this was like one of those albums that every time I heard it, I would hear something new, like I totally missed on the last listen. Such a like kind of multifaceted album. There's so many ideas going on, but there is like a through line that kind of holds this all together as well. You know, as erratic as it is at points, I do think he's done a great job of keeping the album thematically on point. Even where he goes into more like introspective tracks like Silencio, I feel like it works with the rest of the album. It feels like every track has a purpose on the release. They give the album the kind of dynamic shifts it needs to take you through the full kind of journey. That being said, I do think there are tracks that are more magnetic than others, and deliver more of a kind of lasting effect after the album is done. And I think that's something that this album does better than the last release, which I had a quick listen to. I hadn't heard any of this stuff before, but I did go back and listen to the previous album. That album was a bit more disjointed, a bit more fragmented for me. And this does feel more refined with more hooks, but still with that little side of madness on it as well. I don't know if this is an album for everyone. I think it could be an album that may split opinion. But I think whatever conclusion you come to with this, I have a feeling that you're unlikely to hear another album like this in 2023. Like, I know we're only in March, but it's definitely the most unique thing I've heard like this year for sure. And not just in the songwriting. I think the production is fucking exceptional. The production is just as distinctive as the music itself. I think Kurt Ballou has knocked it out of the park on this one. I really enjoyed this. It's noise rock is not my usual genre. It's not something that I listen to a lot, but I felt like this was mixed enough with other styles, and just a real kind of originality that really kind of kept me hooked into this. What about yourself? How did you get on with this one?
Well, watch me do this, Dave. I fucking love this.
Oh.
Like, I absolutely love this. This is like literally, let's go through the checklist of everything that Duncan wants in music, and let's shove it all on one album. I know what you're saying. This might upset some people. Those people aren't worth talking to. Let's just pretend they don't exist. So I did a bit of research while you were talking. That's why my eyes were down. 20th of January, you sent me the single.
All right, okay.
Via YouTube. New Svart band sounds fucking awesome.
Right.
I sent you a message back saying this is my jam. To which you were like that, something like can't wait to hear them, and I was like that, they released an album last year.
Right.
And then I think we both joked about how have we never heard of these guys before. So it's good to know that a couple of months on.
This was ringing the bell.
Chances are we probably had heard them before, but our memories being the way they are, we've completely forgotten they existed. So I had heard at least 2 tracks.
Okay.
And Omisha was the first one that I'd heard. And that's the one that has this big old dirty fucking sludge about it. And we mentioned the aforementioned almost kind of Rage Against the Machine mid-90s nasty, and you're like, what the fuck is that? You just shake your ass. It's fucking amazing. but I had this really, really fucking great production. Kurt Ballou being involved, this totally makes sense. I will, once again, not that we want to continually stroke this guy off, it's not just the fact that this guy is multifaceted in his approach and what he does. Kurt Ballou's managed to take all that and cohesively put it on an album, which is fucking insane. I mean, as a musician, yeah, you can learn to play different techniques. As a vocalist, it's slightly harder to learn to do different styles and all the rest. But to not only have that in a position where that musician's playing it, but you manage to put it all in an album and make it sound like it all fits, that's no mean feat. So he's done wonders here, as always. The album is fucking awesome. Like the opening track. See, I never had like the kind of the whiplash effect to that opening track as much as maybe you did, because from my perspective, I'd already heard two very distinctive sounding tracks. So when the opening track kicked in and had that weird kind of synthy thing going on, kind of very like late 70s, early 80s kind of weird synth thing going on, deep, like so deep and disgusting guitars and like that kind of noise. You mentioned Author and Punisher. I don't think you're that far off that, you know, maybe just less industrial, but certainly designed for purpose to assault the ears. So I like that came in, and to me it sounded very much like right, well, all bets are off, so to speak, straight away. So this is the third track I've now heard, and all three tracks are completely different. So I'm just settling myself into the fact that I think this album is just going to be distinct from start to finish. There are themes for sure, and they usually are grouped in twos, which is weird, like Swimming Dog and Omniscia. Those two tracks are not a huge difference apart. Severance into Blue Whale, not a huge gap apart. Goons into Glow Stick, not a huge gap apart, and Silencio into Celia's Mansion, not a huge step away. So they are almost the weirdly boarding Noah's Ark. It was Noah, wasn't it? Or was Noah the one with the... I can't remember. One of them had like stones. That was Moses. Let my people go. I don't know. And I don't even know why I went in the Bible road. This is like, I'm the least qualified person to talk about anything biblical. But yeah, they come in twos. They group themselves in twos. Out with track one, which I can't pronounce, and Animal Insults, which are the two real oddballs on the album overall. Because both those songs are designed really to kind of fuck with your brain. And I love that about it, because I feel that just when you get a kind of hook on what you think you're going to get, it takes it in a different direction, but it's never an unwelcome direction. It's always very surprisingly measured, even though it's relatively chaotic. This guy is like, as multi-instrumental as go, this guy is about as close as you're going to get to an artist. And I mean that in the sense of artist as opposed to musical artist. I mean, just in general, it's at times incredibly abstract. It's like staring at a picture, like a painting that someone's done, and you know, you've got people around you going, oh yes, I see the anger, and you're like, that is it anger? And then if you stare at it, or even like a magic picture, you're staring at the chaos, and then everything eventually creates a picture. And when that picture happens, you're like, oh fuck, I see the cat. It's kind of like that at times, even though there's not necessarily any rhyme or reason why he's approaching something with. Like, a good example here is Glow Stick, which kicks off, or even Guns, which kick off with very erratic kind of drumming, to the point that you're kind of tuning into it going, that right, well, this just seems like it's very disjointed. Both those tracks have a point, maybe about a minute into it, maybe just over a minute, where everything seems to sync up and then hit a groove point. And then from there, you just go with it. So if he does decide to go back to that, or do something unpleasant, you're always grounded with this kind of groove thing that he's doing. It's very, very, very smart. It's very smart, because at no point do I feel I sometimes do with artists that are a bit more avant-garde. Like there's the one thing they do that I'm like, they just didn't do that. I never had that at all with this album. I think his vocal stylings are a delight, and everything he does is really interesting. Whether it's that more percussive sound, the kind of thing he does, like just as a hook on the end of bars for no reason, but it works. To the falsetto vocals you were talking to, ultimately, when you come into Celia's Mansion, which is a fucking stunning closing track, it kind of sounds like if Joseph Merrick, the closing track on Leviathan, was covered by our buddy at Dawnwalker. It's it's got this kind of almost. It's kind of got this almost kind of 50s Americana mixed with sludge.
Yeah.
And it works so fucking well. I'd like give me an album of that, an album that I didn't know I needed. I fucking adore it. And I think Silencio is the perfect foil to fit into it. It just really, and generally I'm against the idea of having the kind of the false ending. We've talked about before. Bands that do the quiet track and then you're like, oh, that's the end, and then they do another quiet track and you're like,
yeah.
This totally works because Glowstick is so erratic that Silencio kind of balances your thoughts out so you get the full appreciation of Celia's Mansion. So, like, across the board, what he's delivering is awesome. You get this almost kind of pomp and circumstance, over-the-top 70s rock on Severance. That just fits again. It's like very ostentatious. The vocals of that falsetto is sort of vocals that kick in over the chorus and into the later parts of the track, which really work. Blue Whale has this like a weirdly aggressive attack for a track which at times is not as aggressive as you think it is. It plays with texture and tone and style and contrast and is very, very, very smartly constructed. When you're saying it might be like something that's off-putting to some listeners, I think those listeners are just wanting one thing.
Possibly.
And sometimes I want that too. And I don't want quirk and I don't want extravagance for the sake of it. I don't want people to be eccentric just because they think it'll sell. I want things that challenge me at times, but also things that show me that musically, what you can do is play with everything. It's maybe the part of me that loves a lot of kind of J-rock and stuff. Is like nothing's off the table, and occasionally some things put on the table you wish wasn't on the table. But what I love about this is this guy has always at his core there is a kind of sludge element to what he's doing. It kind of exists mostly in the guitar tone, but it always exists there. And rather than do sludge with blackened sides or sludge with kind of, I don't know, keys or sludge with whatever, he's approached with many different sides with sludge at the core, and I think that's what's so interesting about it. It takes bands maybe 4 or 5 albums to go through the journey he takes you in one album, and to me it all works. I never even the stuff that isn't as this is the one thing I will say, I could recall right now any of these tracks. They're all distinctive enough. Even the ones that are in kind of twos are distinctive enough that I can remember, there's this element and it does this part, or the drums kicking really aggressive here and do a kind of tribal thing, or there's a rap section here, or there's a weird keyboard bit that ends this track. It is all distinctive, it is all highly memorable, and it's all stuff that I think fucking works. I love this. I genuinely love this. I've been teasing you for the last 2 days about how little I've listened to it when I've been spinning it constantly. I think it is fucking awesome. I genuinely think I'm actually quite ashamed I'm so late to the party here. I'm curious to check out some of the older stuff, even though you're saying it's maybe not as refined as this. The journey to this might be really, really, really interesting because he's not a multi-instrumentalist that plays 3 keys on a keyboard and also can play like a 4/4 beat, but his primary instrument's the guitar and vocals. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He clearly has everything in the bag. And whether or not he's playing every single instrument on this, or whether he's got session...
I think he's doing guitars, vocals, keyboards, all kind of real instruments. There's a different guy playing drums, and I think they've got someone doing synth bass as well. Maybe a couple of additional vocalists as well.
I've been spoiled this year because I've already found Zetra. And Zetra weirdly shares a lot of weird DNA in here, specifically around a lot of the core sort of 70s vibes. That's just they've taken it to the kind of synthy world with it. But if you were to strip it a lot, that's the kind of the bass and that guitar tone. It also exists weirdly in that Deadsy world as well, of just really detuned, really nasty sounding kind of when the groove's there. But yeah, I mean the dude is mega talented, but not only is he mega talented, he's a really good songwriter. So being able to play a lot of instruments does not necessarily mean you can write good music, and he's got it in spades. It just so happens he teamed up with arguably the best producer on the planet at the moment to release something that I think is... I can't stop listening to it. I genuinely think this is fucking incredible. So Svart Records, once again, doing the Lord's work and bringing our attention to another group that had been out there for a while, and hopefully this is his time to shine. I did a tiny little bit of research before we started work, and it turns out very much like the Zetra thing that we spoke about on our podcast recently, Netherlands are a band that a lot of very well-established big metal bands actually love. Right. So, which would make a lot of sense to me. I could imagine Gojira was mentioned as one of them, where they're apparently big fans. I could imagine Netherlands open up for Gojira. Yeah. They are the scuzzier, sludgier, and at times just as endearing Mantar to me. They have that Mantar quality about them, in that it has a lot of personality and a lot of grit. But there's so many moments of joy in this for me, where I sit back and just go, this is as good as it gets. So I think this is fucking incredible. I've probably given away my score, but I don't care. This as you would say, Dave, and as I believe the kids say, this fucks. So.
Okay, too old for that phrase now, Duncan. Ratings for this new album from Netherlands. I agree. I think this is perfect for Svart Records. Like, I couldn't imagine this on another label. It's just absolutely spot on. I think, they have a real varied mix of bands and artists that all have this unique quality about them, and Netherlands definitely have that as well. This is imaginative. It's unorthodox. It's refreshing, and it's like flawlessly produced. Like the production is so good. There are maybe tracks on here that are maybe slightly out with my comfort zone, but I think they still add something essential to the album that shows all the sides to Netherlands. I'm going to go 4.5 out of 5 on this one. Yeah, really enjoyed it. Duncan.
Easy 5. Ooh. Easy 5. Yeah, like this year is spoiling me to fuck, by the way. What I'm loving about it is every band so far that's had a 5 for me this year is in a completely different genre. And I hope that trend just keeps continuing to the end of the year. This is so fucking good. This is like needlessly good is a phrase that I'm using a lot this year. Like, it doesn't need to be as good as it is, but I'm glad that it is. So 5.
Nice. So that is Netherlands, Severance, out on March 31st via Svart Records. Links below to the band, to the Bandcamp. Check it out. Have a listen. Let us know what you think. Stick some comments in below. That is the review. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon. But until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.